What do you think of when you hear the word justice? Of a hero coming to save the day, of a person ridding evil, defeating the bad guys, someone strong, someone dependable, someone with a smile, someone you can put your faith in, have trust in, to be there when everything goes downhill. Now tell me, does this look like your hero of justice? Yeah, I thought so. Young Woong is one of the many fighters that appear in Tuhak's manhwa, Fight Class 3. A second year of Namil High School, he resides within one of the many fight classes, exclusively for those only aspiring to be great fighters. I personally believe that he is a pretty interesting individual, as his motives, beliefs, actions, and attitudes are pretty perplexing and somewhat contradictory. Without further ado, let's move on to the first part. Young-in first appears during a retelling of Maria's fight against a disfigured and unknown fighter who strikes fear into her heart. As gossip occurs between the students in the classroom, he intervenes, shoulder checking them as he reminds them not to talk behind other people's backs. A similar scenario occurs yet again when Jitai questions Young Woong about Maria's whereabouts. We already know that she is beating up Dongwon in the gymnasium. As animosity towards Miria brews yet again, Young-in is quick to shut it down, stating that if there are any complaints, then they should submit it in before the ranking matches. It would be assumed that Young-in holds a high degree of respect towards talented individuals like Miria. However, as we come to understand, that is far from the truth. Cracks already begin to appear in Young-in's persona from the very start, with his interaction with Gibaram, Taeyang, and Hamin. We learn from Baran that the three of them, Young Woong, Hye-Ri, and himself, used to be close friends, often spending a lot of time together when they were younger. However, as each of them grew older, Young Woong drifted apart from him, becoming more distant. We also get a glimpse of people's perception of him, of a righteous individual who won't hesitate to utilize violence to get rid of any troublemakers. Taeyang also remarks that it feels like Young Woong is looking down upon them. More about that later. Yet this righteousness and this belief that Young crafts falls flat in the face of mentions of Maria and Jitai. In the chapters that follow Jitai's fight with the bullies, Ji-eun desperately searches for help. Bumping into Young-eun, her relief is palpable, as she hurriedly recounts the danger Jitai is in. Both her and Young-eun rush to help, but he falters at the mention of Jitai and his relation to Maria. Jitai is eventually rescued by So-wol, but this marks the start of unveiling the facade adopted by Young-eun. The picture gets clearer as time passes by. As Young-eun appears more often, we understand that the grudging respect for Miria that he supposedly holds is simply a lie, and this animosity reaches its peak when he walks to the cage to fight Miria. We already know how competent of a fighter Miria is, but Young-eun is also a fierce fighter in his own right. All three of his fights leading up to the main bout all ended up in KOs in the first round. Furthermore, in his first year, he fought another member of the current Fight Class 3, Yang Ki-hyun. This fight ended up being one of the top 3 major events in Namil's high school history, due to it being an all-out slugfest and the loser passing out standing. As Maria and Young-eun meet in the cage, we see him come to an agreement with Maria's rebellion in the first year, beating up the second years who were harassing and bullying the younger peers. He despises those who hurt others, but then he flips his thinking, telling her that she is the same to people like him. With a screwed up expression on his face, he welcomes her back to the cage. Essentially, the statement makes him to be quite the hypocrite, I guess so absorbed in his beliefs, so convinced that he doesn't just beat people up, perhaps thinking that he is instead serving a form of justice than just senseless violence. He categorizes himself to be different than those individuals like Maria who kill and just enact bloodshed. I understand that Maria has, killed people, but he himself has hurt others, which contradicts his own beliefs. He further extends his threat to those that hold Maria on a pedestal, labeling these individuals as accomplices. Even Bahram is no exception to this rule, despite being close to Young-eun. Young-eun folds this up with a twisted smile on his face, telling Maria that his motto is to wipe the floor until it's clean, including Maria's puppy, Georgie Tai. This triggers the usually nonchalant Miria. He is brutally beaten. Hye-Ri remains as an immensely pivotal figure in shaping Young Woong's convictions and beliefs. Her trauma gave him the strength, became the catalyst to take the first step to uphold his form of justice. The audience is privy to Young Woong's innermost thoughts and his earliest memories. Young Woong's statement about despising the individuals that enable Maria's violence parallels his memories of Hye-Ri talking about the bystanders and those who did nothing to stop the continued bullying of her younger brother. Young children are extremely impressionable, and Hye-Ri's aggravation, her distress, and her righteous anger carve something deep within Young Woong. For him, her brother's death molds itself into a conviction, a belief that the authority figures are useless. Judging by Hye-Ri's scoffing of the eradication of school violence campaigns plastered on the notice board, a belief that he should enact violence upon those who enable such behavior and those who do nothing to stop it. He believes that true peace is born out of revenge. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This forgiveness is your greatest revenge and loving your enemies. Bullshit he just discards. His thoughts are dark and disturbing, but Hye-Ri in her suffering always comes to Young Woong's mind. So, he upholds it. He tracks down the murderer who killed Hye-Ri's brother, and seeing that this individual held no trace of repentance, he was relieved. This solidified his conviction, reinforced the notion that bullies would be bullies, always in the end. He spent so long undertaking the goal he had, and the doubts that were plaguing him were eased as he erased any last shred of life within his victim. And upon the completion of his revenge, what did he feel? As the rain poured down around him, instead of the emptiness that many people would say, what did he feel? A sense of pride and accomplishment. His efforts bore fruit, and this was simply the first step of many in ensuring that there will be no other victims like Hye-Ri. But he also understands that Hye-Ri will possibly know that it was him who killed this person, so we see him decide to confess. But as he is about to walk into the room, he pauses, looking at the back of Hye-Ri as she prays to God. Instead of fear and anger, she cries tears of joy, and this propels him to continue. Young Woong exploits society's perception of him, a hero of justice, to inflict punishment upon the evil that includes Miria. I think that Young Woong believes that there are only two sides, the good and the evil, only two colors, the black and the white. He utilizes a false dichotomy of good and bad to justify his own intent and his own actions. As Yang Ki-hoon points out, what are some characteristics that defines individuals who murder people? Individuals who only focus on the good and the bad, who only look at the distinctions rather than the similarities. Those that sound exactly like Young Woong. Yang Ki-hoon is a very sensitive individual in the way that he can pick up exactly what others think, what their actions are, and what their attitudes are like. Young Woong notices this as well. In the end, whether he believes it or not, he can't run away from the fact that him and Maria are the same. Young Woong's unraveling and subsequent descent into madness is marked by his breakup with Hye-Ri. A pillar of solidarity and comfort, her fear of his fights, of his creed being compromised by violence and bloodshed, of him acting like the bullies, eventually results in her pushing him away. And from then on we see a man consumed by anger, of his inadequacy. Unwilling to be defeated again by the evil, the man takes drastic measures and becomes an abomination that haunts the sewers, that haunts the dreaded tunnels. In the aftermath of his fight with Maria and Jitai, we see his conviction waver. As he breathes his final breath, he thinks of Hye-Ri, of her prayers, and of him. Did she know that he was there? Did she ever care about the killer of her brother? Or did she just simply want to move on? Who knows? His breath leaves him as the body stills in the cold, indicating waters of the dark.